Number 3, Michigan at Maryland. That is noon Eastern on Big Fox. Gus and Joel on the call. Michigan is favored by 19.5, and they damn well should be. They are 11-0, or looking to go 11-0 for the first time in back-to-back years since 1901 and 1902. That's 121 years that they've been doing this. And regardless of what happens, they're going to play Ohio State, and the winner of that game is going to get into the conference championship as a representative for the Big Ten East. But last week, we got to see once again what this Michigan team is made of and what they are about. Now, put aside that all of their wounds are self-inflicted. How they have chosen to respond to those has been really fascinating and, quite frankly, entertaining to watch. I got Jim Harbaugh out here quoting Yellowstone about catching a cold. I think we should all be on the lookout for when that man starts to quote Full Metal Jacket and A Few Good Men. Then we might want to think, hey, pump the brakes just a little bit there, Jimmy Harbaugh, just a little bit. But right now, his whole team is eating this up. They love that man. You had Sharon Moore cussing not once, but twice on broadcast television because he was so emotional with getting that win against Penn State on the road to more or less tell everybody, no, this is who Michigan is, and this is what we represent. And they've been representing like this for the past 3 years, if we're being quite frank about it, 35-3 over that span. Michigan has also been more dominant than both Georgia and Ohio State. Check this out. They have beaten teams by an average of 31.5 points per game, right? Last week's game was about the closest that they played all year. Georgia, on the other hand, has beaten teams by 25 a game, and Ohio State by 23.4 a game. Georgia and Ohio State actually have more in common with each other than they do with Michigan, who's just been a cut above the teams that they've been playing. It goes even deeper on that. On paper, this team that we're watching in 2023 that might end up playing 6 games, half the season without their head coach on the sideline, is already better than the 1997 national title team in some very important categories. Scoring defense, and points allowed per game being, I guess scoring defense now that I think about it. 39 points per game is what they're averaging this year to 28.1 in 97, giving up 8.4 a game in 97, 7.5 a game this year. The last one possession game that Michigan played was in the Fiesta Bowl against Texas Christian. And the last time that they had a regular season home loss was October 30th, 2021 against Michigan State. You'll remember that Michigan State made a New Year's Six Bowl and won 11 games. And they haven't lost to an unranked opponent since November 28th, 2020, which also really, for me, is quite the turnaround because in that year, we're talking about not only Michigan going 2-4 and dodging Ohio State, not playing the game for the first time in I can't remember how long, but we're talking about Jim Harbaugh on his way out, perhaps going to the NFL. We're talking about him perhaps losing more coordinators and losing the faith of the Go Blue faithful. We're also talking about Ward Manuel drafting up a contract that's got performance points that he has to meet in order to gain his entire contract. That has since come and gone. And now they are going to the mat, going to court, quite literally, try to keep that man on the sideline. It just goes to show you what winning can do for you, even if you're 2-4 and have a loss to an unranked Penn State in 2020. You could be sitting pretty looking to go 11-0 against a Maryland team that, frankly, has no shot on paper, right? Like, it's difficult to say that out loud, but hear me out here. Maryland is 0-33 against ranked opponents in the Big Ten. It goes deeper than that. Maryland has not beaten a top 10 opponent since 2007. Against Boston College when they were members of the ACC. They're in year 9 of being a Big Ten member, and they've never had a top 10 win against a Big Ten member. Needless to say, they're able to pull that off against Michigan this weekend. Not going to turn nothing down but this turtleneck, you know what I'm saying? I'll tip the hat to Mike Locksley, but that's just what the Terrapins are up against going into this. And we have all given Michigan even more coal to shove into the furnace that is their locomotive, with the sign stealing scandal being what it is. I just want to recap the timeline here because we're not even a month into this thing and so much has happened. October 19th, the NCAA begins its investigation. October 20th, Connor Stallions, who's at the center of the investigation, was suspended by Michigan. November 2nd, Big Ten coaches pressed Big Ten Commissioner Tony Petitti to do something about the sign stealing that was going on that was rampant at Michigan. November 10th, we got the Big Ten suspending Jim Harbaugh in response to all of this for the remainder of the season, which is 3 games, Penn State, Maryland, and Ohio State. And then the same day, in truly Michigan men fashion, Michigan files a temporary restraining order attempting to block the Big Ten's suspension of Jim Harbaugh, who took to the days yesterday on Monday and told everybody, I won't be commenting on the suspension because there's a hearing on Friday. There quite literally is a hearing on Friday to find out whether or not Jim Harbaugh is going to be allowed on the sidelines for Maryland or Ohio State. And then November 11th, Michigan absolutely stops a mud hole in Penn State if you're watching the football game and you're not just looking at the scoreboard. And then November 17th, we're going to find out whether or not that dude gets to coach. But I really enjoy when players and coaches are all pulling in the same direction, even if it's the same direction that was self-inflicted by Michigan. So when you see a bunch of guys out there yelling bet or saying we'll go to the mat for Jim Harbaugh, I think you need to take that into account when we talk about that dude. I think we really need to account for everybody in the building loves him. Everybody in the building wants to fight for him. That's not an easy thing to do. It is not an easy thing for one man to rally everybody in the same direction and feel so much loyalty at a time when it might be difficult to be who he is. But this is also a guy that absolutely wears the Bo Schembechler hat and thinks he's John Dutton in Ann Arbor. So if anybody could pull that off, it would be Jim Harbaugh at Michigan. But once again, all they got to do is keep winning, because I know they brought Ric Flair in there, and you'll know that I am prone to quote Ric Flair on this here show. And yes, to be the man, you got to beat the man, which is probably what you say to Ohio State, but that's also what you are saying to Georgia. So even if you're the number 1 team in the country, to me, you got to show it once again against Maryland, once again against Ohio State, probably against the Big Ten West champ that might be Iowa. And then finally, you ain't won a game in the college football playoff. So you still got some work to do. So carry this whole energy, all of it, through to January, and then we'll talk about what Michigan football is or isn't. If you like what you've seen, consider subscribing to the #1 college football show on YouTube, the Fox Sports app, or wherever you get your podcast.